all social media at Win or Lose Show. Today's guest is BriAnna Garza. If you follow sports, if you follow basketball specifically, you've seen BriAnna in your reels and on your timeline with these shooting videos. Um, like I said, I'm a shooter. I'm a shooter myself. I think I'm one of the best shooters I've ever seen. But but BriAnna is the shooter. I love to watch her shoot. I love to watch her work and watch her teach. Last year I had the pleasure of having her on my episode. Oh, actually, she was on my first video episode of this podcast. So I don't know if you knew that or not, but
No, I didn't know that.
yeah, you're my first video episode of this podcast. So
Okay,
thank
okay.
you for that. But
Yeah, studio's been upgraded, I can see.
yeah. A lot of upgrades since last year. I've learned some things since last year. Well, last year we used Zoom. Riverside obviously is a better platform. It's smoother. Well, other than the last little hiccup we just had a couple
Yeah.
minutes ago. But it's a lot more smoother. But I appreciate you taking out your time. I know you were busy person. But I wanted to catch up with you. What's been going on over the last year? Last year you did the event at March Madness. Talk about that event and how did it come about, and what's going to happen next year at the event.
Yeah. So last year I built the Change in the Game conference, really just out of a a sort of responsibility I feel to grow this profession into the standard that I believe it demands, and also out of just pure spite,
Mm-hmm.
really, out of a situation that happened to me. If you guys want to hear more about that story, you can listen to the last episode. But yeah, it's the Changing the Game conference. It was 10 women. It was the first completely women-led coaching conference and player development conference. We held it at the Final Four, and honestly, Jesse, it was absolutely beautiful.
Wow.
It was the greatest thing I've ever created. It was so just different than most coaching conferences you go to are great, and that the speakers come ready, and the people in the audience, everybody's there trying to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And just being frank, every player development conference or coaching conference I've been to, both the speaker lineup and the audience combined, it's probably like 97% men
Wow.
in that room. So if
Yeah.
I went to a conference and there's 300 people there, maybe 6 or 7 of those people will be women. And I don't think it's not. I don't think it's necessarily because women don't feel safe there or anything like that. But it can be intimidating for any woman in this space that's not in the pro space or the high level college space. Somebody that's trying to lean into this profession and learn
Mm-hmm.
more. Being in a room with that isn't created with the total idea of connection and safety.
Right.
It not necessarily because that's the wrong thing, it just wouldn't necessarily be inviting. And so that's what I wanted to do different. Is I wanted to create a space that both men and women felt like, okay, I'm going to get here, I'm going to get into my bag, and I'm going to be safe here no matter what level I'm coaching. And so we had coaches show up that were Division 1 coaches, pro coaches. We also had coaches that were in their first year of coaching their like fourth graders tiny tot basketball
Right.
team. And everybody there was welcome. Everybody there grew. Everybody there learned from each other. There was one particular guest who came, attendee who came, named Christy, who was like, who all of us, I think, who attended remembered. She was the one I just mentioned, who was just coaching her fourth grade son's basketball team. And
Wow.
when she walked in, she was kind of overwhelmed to the point of tears.
Mm.
And so one of my staff members brought her over to me, and I could see she was just, I think it was like a lot of pressure, a lot of nervousness. Like, do I belong here? Is what she asked me. And I said, you are absolutely the person I created this conference for,
Mm-hmm.
because we tend to give children the bottom of the barrel of
Right.
like even our own effort, right? As coaches, we're just volunteer coaches, we're just parents, we're just this. When really, like, children deserve the very best of us
Mm-hmm.
to set the foundation. So you going out of your way to be that standard for youth coaches is exactly why I created this conference.
Right.
And we had executive coaches there that didn't even had never even played basketball before. We had Olympic volleyball coaches from Canada that came down. Like, the room was full of like hearts and people who weren't afraid to not be like minded, and to have those hard conversations in the middle of growing together. And the mixer was fire. We had live music at the mixer. We had sponsors. Our sponsors being vodka. Hooked it up with we made some drinks that were just uh, custom to the conference. And
Right.
yeah, it was the hardest thing I've ever done. And it was absolutely beautiful. We've since turned it into a nonprofit.
Wow.
So I've used that nonprofit to do work, all over the world. That's just empowering coaches, women and men, but empowering, yeah, coaches to hold a different type of standard, because I think we've let it slip a little bit.
Yeah.
And so that was the purpose of it. This year, we're running it back at the Final Four again in Tampa Bay. I actually just got back from Tampa Bay, where I checked out the facility that we're going to hold it in. I locked in the mixer location, which is going to be on the beach, beachfront, sand volleyball, live
Mm.
music,
Okay.
fire pit, like real vibe, where we can all connect with each other and just be humans after, leaning into
Yeah.
what we're doing. And yeah, it's cool to see to talk to you again a year later, um, and feel myself leaning into the idea, like, yeah, the audacity to think that me, just one person, can really be a catalyst for change, for really resetting a culture of what's expected, and what's not expected, and
Right.
what's tolerated in coaching. Like, coaches at all levels should be afraid to show up unprepared or like unwilling to work through their own traumas, because our
Mm-hmm.
traumas that we haven't worked through are going to be like, our kids are our mirrors,
Right.
right? So if we're coaching through our own traumas and not dealing with those things, then how dare you pass those along to the people who are looking to you to be their leader? And so we had some really hard conversations, some really transformative things. I still get messages from some of the people who attended last year saying, like, one of the volleyball coaches from Canada hit me and was just like, I can't believe how much I've been shaped, by a sport that wasn't even mine, by
Wow.
all of the women in there. And I feel really strong about who I am as a speaker, as a presenter, as a leader. And every single woman that I've found to stand shoulder to shoulder with me, they're all way better than me. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's cool to just be in a room with that many great minds, and for them to lean into this project with me. It like doesn't even feel like last year was last year. It feels like it just happened and we're already
Wow.
planning for the next one.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the catch up on that. It being a nonprofit now, last year I put $70,000 of my own cash flow into
Wow.
that project, and
Wow.
I cannot do that again.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we're in the middle of fundraising rounds and doing more with the money than just, running that conference. But that's a huge project that we're putting on each year. Um, yeah, that's the update there on the conference front.
Well, kudos to you for having a successful event, successful conference, not just an event. Uh, but that shows you the work that you put in, the time that you put into your craft, not just your craft, but the to expand it beyond yourself and to give to other people who probably needed exactly what was heard at the conference. And I want to go back to what you said about youth coaches, because I remember
Mm.
when my son and my daughter was playing junior high basketball. Like, I understand fourth grade and fifth grade because they were like, everybody wore a wristband and you just guard the person who has the same color as you. But it wasn't like that when I was in elementary. because we had a serious coach. But nowadays it's a little different. Now is now is everybody needs to learn at the same pace. Everybody needs to learn the same things. But I don't believe that should be the case, because in junior high, when my kids were in junior high, especially my daughter, the coach, I was so frustrated with the coaching because it was uh, everybody had different skill sets. Everybody had different learning abilities. My daughter was raised in sports. Like her mother played basketball. Her mother ran track. I ran track. I played basketball. I played football. So it's like she didn't get the coaching that I think that she deserved at that age, because her learning was wide open. Like her brain was wide open for someone to talk. Like I taught her everything that I could have taught her as far as playing basketball. But when you're being coached, I can't interfere with that on the floor, in the game, in practices. I can't interfere with that. I would never interfere with coaching. And me being now an assistant coach at a high school, I understand that. So that was so frustrating. Like, oh my God, like, well, I can't do anything. I just got to sit by and watch until she comes home, or until the off season. I can say, hey, this is what needs to be done. This is what was said right. This is what's wrong. But kudos to you for having that conference for even youth coaches to learn and say, okay, we do need to pour in to these kids and teach important parts of the game, any sport.
Yeah, and I think like the best teachers I've ever seen can put a pro and a 12-year-old in the same workout, right?
Yep.
Like Phil Handy's a great example of that. Like he can be working out an NBA guy and then a really skilled seventh grader, and probably give the NBA guy different cues. You know, I need you to make all these finishes outside the paint. Whereas the younger player, like you're still going to work on the same thing, same rhythm, same move, but you know, like you can work it a little closer to the basket. And so being able to add wrinkles to your development depending on who's in the gym, and wrinkles to different players in the gym. Those are some of the things that some of our coaches talked about. Camille Lenore, true point guard is her handle. She did an excellent practical on like skill development and skill enhancement training. Vera Jo Bustos is one of the top 5% of speakers in the world, in the country, and she speaks exclusively on confidence. So she poured confidence into these coaches. And Dr. Hillary Cawthon, who now has just recently been voted in as the president of the American Association for Sports Psychology. She talked on, or she spoke on mental health for coaches, which we kind of talked on earlier, like because your mental health is going to be a direct reflection and resonation to theirs. And I could go on and on. Marky Freeman, who is an ESPN sideline reporter and just the best of all of us, when it comes to speaking and engaging a crowd. Like, I mean, everybody brought their absolute best because it was the standard. That's what it was. And women in this space have been held to a different standard for so long that our standard is simply different. And so putting those women together and then setting the standard for them, not that they wouldn't have already set it for themselves in the way they show up. We did it together, and our job was to make sure everybody in that room felt connected, and we did that.
Now,
we did that shit.
Yeah, you did.
We did that shit.
How has it changed since the conference? Are you being approached by different coaches to get more? Are you being approached by different athletes to be taught or to be trained?
I think that the ripples of the conference are ones that I'm not sure I'll ever be able to identify as something tangible, but they're there. I mean, some of the mini ripples. I mean, for my speakers, for example, Jess Ross was one of my speakers, who is a basketball like movement strength specialist. She landed herself a gig in Miami with a great like strength and conditioning, really well respected strength and conditioning program. She's like the head director of their athletic department of strength conditioning. So she's training like some of the Heat players, some pro soccer players out of my FC Miami. Like she's doing that now. That's one ripple. Several of my speakers have gotten engagements with even some of the attendees or the audience members who were like what you said to me spoke to me so heavily that I need you to come here. I mean, like I said, Dr. Cawthon just got voted as the president of the American Association of Sports Psychology post-conference. I mean, so it's like the ripples that were created. I mean, not just for me. Like I couldn't tell you what was created for me. I didn't really make it for me. I made it for the women who were willing to stand shoulder to shoulder with me, and for the audience who was willing to invest in this project that had never been done before. And so for them, like I can think of tangible ripples. For me, I grew in like that was an absolutely audacious project of me to think I could freaking pull off, and I pulled it off. Like we made it work. It was freaking hard. Like I said, I cried for like 14 days straight trying to do this thing. Like, how am I gonna? I had 8 months to find $100,000 that I didn't have to put on this event in the way that I needed it to put it up to the standard, right? And so growing there, but now that I've done it, I sort of have this feeling of like I just don't panic ever anymore. Like after that, like that was so hard, and I've been through so much with that. Like when problems arise in my business, or when for somebody else, like I've just been able to think through it from a frame of leadership and service that I maybe didn't have before putting myself through something that hard for other people. And there's things I would do differently, like really to take care of myself a little bit better. But I read this quote just recently by Simon Sinek that said it's something like it's great to serve yourself, and it's an absolute honor to serve others. And like that's for me, and like my own view of leadership is very service based. Is behaviors that get modeled, get repeated. There were my team, my staff that I had there, like they were like their energy was going to reflect mine. So when things went wrong, we had to put out fires. You just did it with a smile and a deep breath. And I mean, for it being our very first event, like the thing was, I mean, it was great. I can't wait for year two. Everybody's already been hitting me up from like, all the different places. Like, and Tampa's going to be much better weather than Cleveland.
Oh yeah, especially around that time of year. But you talked about other people's ripple effects from the event, but that is yours. Other people's success and how they move forward from after the event. That is your story. That's part of your story and part of how you made this event happen. And if it wasn't for that event, these opportunities might not have happened. So at that time, so shout out to you for making that happen and having the effect on other people's success. That's still your success, other people's success. Just like you say, I mean, you can service yourself, but serving others is a bigger part of life. So shout out to you for that. Like you have to give yourself credit. You did it. Like you said, you made this happen, and it's going to happen again next year and again the year after, 2026. So, I mean, that's huge, especially for an event like March Madness. Like, I'm sure there's tons and tons of people, putting on events during that time, but to have it in the city of March Madness when it's happening, that's huge.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, man. That's kind of you.
It's true though.
man.
But let's kind of switch gears. The WNBA was huge this year.
We knew it. We knew it was gonna be. Jess.
We did. We talked about this. If you go back and look at the last episode, we talked about this and how big the WNBA was going to be this year, this past year. Talked about Caitlin Clark, who is one of the best shooters in the world, male or female, one of the best shooters ever. And her impact, I knew that she was going to have a good year, but the impactful moments in that year is so crazy. how that happened. A rookie, not just a rookie, but playing for Indiana, not a big market, but the games were sold out events. The ratings on the TV were explosive.
Mm,
Like this was something that the WNBA needed, even though
right.
they were $40 million short this year. But I think that comes with it. That comes with growth.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you're preaching to the choir here. I mean, I think the phrase I used last year is that we were right inside the heartbeat of the
Mm-hmm.
growth of women's basketball. And yeah, to watch it unfold this year, for my big brother who is like country, South Texas,
Mm-hmm.
wears his boots, puts on it, pulls himself up by his bootstraps every day, calling me, talking about Caitlin Clark.
Wow.
Like, never in my life. And I had to explain to him, because you remember the moment where her and Kennedy Carter got into
Mm-hmm.
it,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
like that game, and Kennedy Carter like checked her, and it was like uncalled for, and
Yeah.
like the whole 9 yards. And so everybody who's never watched the WNBA before is suddenly knows all of all of like that, and that it was completely Kennedy Carter, you
Yeah.
know, being specifically going at Caitlin Clark. And so I
Mm-hmm.
had to talk my brother down off the cliff and tell him, listen, like, Kennedy Carter is a bucket and a half. Like, she's one of the most skilled offensive players in the history of the game, and also has a very documented track record of who she is in the locker room, who
Yeah.
she presents as on court, her emotional like tendencies. She's punched a teammate in the face before, and so her doing this to Caitlin Clark wasn't personal. This is
Yeah.
who Kennedy Carter is and
Mm-hmm.
was. She's a dog. Like, and I thought that Teresa Weatherspoon did such a fantastic job. I don't think anybody else could have done that job with Kennedy, with Angel Reese, with that Chicago team. And
Oh yeah.
my heart was so broken when I got the news that Teaspoon
Yeah.
was let go from
Yeah.
Chicago. I mean, this year the head coaching, like, what did they fire? Like seven,
Yeah.
eight head coaches
Somebody just
out of
got
12
fired a couple
teams.
couple days ago. Somebody got fired. I forgot who it
Yeah,
was, but
Christy
yeah,
Sides, and then they just hired Stephanie White, which
for
is,
Connecticut Sun.
yeah. But anyway, so it's like those conversations. Yesterday, just my one of my newest contractors that's working with me in Shoot in my own business, told me this story yesterday. He was like, it was so cool. I took my son Trey, a 10-year-old, to get the new NBA 2K 2025,
Mm-hmm.
and he and his buddy Josiah, they plugged it in. And the very first thing they did, the very first league they went into was the WNBA, and they played Indiana versus Indiana, and
Wow.
both of their players were Caitlin Clark.
Wow. That's
10-year-old
huge. Yeah.
boys! 10-year-old boys! That's crazy! And
Yeah.
so, like, yeah, like, the dynamic and being inside of it, and I've got some really exciting, like, news popping up for me personally in some potential off-season work I'll do in the W this year. It's not all set in stone right now, so I don't want to share too much about it. But there's a non-zero chance that I'll be able to work with some of the shooters in the W that really just need one or two things because they're already pros,
Yeah.
right? They already know how to shoot a basketball. They
Right.
just can't figure out where their inconsistencies are coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And this is all I do with my time is I study shooters and
Right.
study teaching and communicating in a really clear way. That's why I love working with pros and I love working with children, because children, you see them improve so much, and I
Yeah.
see all of the arrays of problems that there possibly could be in
Yeah.
a shot when it comes to a 10-year-old who can hardly like control their feet, right? Much less
Right.
a really alien movement in their body. And so my studying children so deeply has allowed me to serve pros in a very specific, very simple, very quick way. And that they're still gonna have to put the reps in, but we're able to really identify the problem right away in a way that makes sense to them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, yeah, that's what was my piece was on at the conference, was physics versus mechanics, and the way that I teach shooting just differently than most of us have been taught. And so being able to share that and spread that, I think, yeah, has increased my own confidence as a teacher and as a leader. But also, like, I realized I posted this a couple of days ago. I realized a couple of days ago that there are coaches all over the world, like, using this curriculum for shooting. Like, I had a coach in Australia hit me up and send me his practice plan, and even
Wow.
the language that he was using, like the names of the drills, like it was my stuff. Like,
Wow.
and then coaches in Canada, in Germany, in Luxembourg, in Amsterdam. Like, I had a coach in Amsterdam who worked in the NBA as a scout for 20 years tell me that after he met me, after we ran work together in Amsterdam, that he wiped clean everything he was doing before and he recreated it
Wow.
from the ideas that I've developed over the last 3 years. And like, that is a humbling feeling. Um, and yeah, like, so a lot of what's up for me is building this nonprofit, making sure that this impact is stretching much further beyond myself, and that the coaches that are attending things like the conference or in the community are feeling empowered and also feeling pushed
Mm-hmm.
to the standard that our children deserve. But also, in shoot or shoot, and bro, I'm making some cool stuff right now. Like, it's a fun place to be in my business. I feel like when you're climbing up a mountain and you're so tired and you're like just 50, 70 feet away from the top, so then you just get this extra wind and you're like, oh yeah, we're
Yeah.
almost there.
Right.
That's what I'm feeling right now. I'm exhausted in the best possible way. And yeah, shooting, man, who knew?
Right. But
Who knew?
that's amazing that you can have something that you love and pass it on to other people. And you love passing it on. You love teaching it.
Mm.
When you talk about pros, though, I want to talk about Mikal Bridges for the New York Knicks. Um, I think he averages over his career at least 35% 3-point shooting. Right now,
Mm-hmm.
he's struggling. I don't know what happened between Phoenix and going to New York City, or was it Brooklyn last year, or wherever
Yeah,
he was
Brooklyn, yeah.
to New York this year. He changed his shot in the middle of the off season, and it's not looking good. What is that mentally? Is that mechanics? How can someone change after being a pro for 7 years or 6 years, and now you have a problem shooting?
So I think shooting, one, like, whoever dabbled with Mikal Bridges' shot and it resulted in what it is now. Um, like, it's just hard to know the details. Like, maybe Mikal Bridges has some nerve things,
Mm-hmm.
right, where he can't. Like, I start to say that, but then if he had nerve things, he wouldn't be able to like gather and slam and dunk, right, or
Right.
do his finishes and stuff. So I don't think that's the issue. I think Mikal Bridges doesn't understand shooting.
Mm.
I think he understood what his shot felt like before, and because it looked kind of funky, somebody tried to change it.
Oh.
And like, yes, there were ways that it could have been more efficient, absolutely. But if you change the feeling for somebody and you can't help them identify what it's supposed to feel like,
Yeah.
then you have nothing. Because
Right.
shooting is such an alien movement. Like, can you name another thing in anybody's life, like, or in your life? Can you tell me one thing that feels like shooting a basketball?
Nothing.
Like, literally
Yeah.
nothing. Like,
Nothing at
I
all.
can't think of one
Yeah.
thing. Like, one point in your life where you're gonna,
Yeah.
hey, how you
Right.
doing? Like, you're never gonna do that. And so the way that I teach shooting differently is I teach from laws of physics instead of mechanics. Like, let me just teach you
Okay.
like, why, like, first, what we want the ball to do, right? We want the
Mm-hmm.
ball to follow the simplest path it could possibly follow in order to get from my hands to the basket,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then we work backwards from there. What is your body like? Let's try it a couple of different ways. You might have to get uncomfortable for a minute, but ultimately, we're going to find something that agrees with physics. And when it agrees with physics, your body's going to like it. What
Mm.
Mikal Bridges has in his shot right now does not agree with physics. It looks like Tim Burton taught him how to shoot, right? Like, it
Tim.
is absolutely, it is absolutely bananas
Yeah.
right now. And so, yeah, you'd be surprised, like, how many non-experts, honestly, are coaching in the NBA,
Mm.
specifically are coaching shooting in the
Really?
NBA. And that's the first time I've said this live, like, in any sort of situation. But I've paid my dues, and studying this craft from bottom to top, I can teach anybody how to shoot. As long as they can jump and move their heads over their hands over their head, I can teach somebody how to shoot. I can help somebody understand why their shot's off. I can look at a shooter, take 3 shots, and say, okay, here's what I suggest that's going to make your shot feel easier for you. Mikal's shot does not look easy.
No.
And so somebody bring me that man. Somebody bring me that man. I'm so serious. And I don't mean that to be like arrogant or, gosh, I hope it doesn't come across as me like being a know-it-all. But for real, like part of why I love coaching shooting and teaching it in this way is because I believe I've truly simplified it. And the feeling that athletes get when they feel that click, like, oh my God, this is what it was supposed to feel like this whole time.
Right.
Especially for high-level athletes, for pros, for Division I players. I just got to do some work with Towson University with their women's basketball program, and I got it on film. This moment where I told this shooter, who's an incredible athlete and a good shooter, but had no confidence because she couldn't understand her shot. She would sometimes make it, sometimes not, and not really know what to do with it. And then I just gave her, a point on her hands, like how to load her hands a little bit differently and why we load our hands differently. And her shot, I kid you not, Jesse, looked exactly the same. Like it really didn't even look different when you looked at it. But because her feeling was different, she had a different understanding of her shot. Like she cashed 8 in a row from the free throw line, smooth. Her shot looked like easier. And she stopped one time and looked at me and her eyes got big. And I'm like, that's the moment. Yeah. Like and so that's, I'd say all this about Mikal. Like, I'm sure every shooting coach or every coach feels some sort of confidence. Like, I could help that guy, as they should if they're a master of this craft. But, like, really, I could help that guy. I could help him. I could help Russ. I could help anybody, like, who, whether they're a tiny tot or a pro. Like, that's just how much belief I have in my own craft. And this is, like, speaking from data, right? Like, I have the data to back it up that it works. And
you have the results to back it up.
The results to back it up. Yeah. And I'm a teacher. I'm not just a technician. Right. And I think where coaches go wrong is they become excellent technicians first, when really you need to become an excellent teacher before you worry about becoming an excellent technician.
Right. And you said something that's very important. You gave her the why. Like, why do I have to change? Why do I have to change the placement of my hand on the ball? Why? Why is that? Why? And a lot of people don't teach why. They just teach, do this and it works. This is what you need to do, and this is going to work. No, if you tell me why I need to do it, I'll have a better understanding of what I need to do to make it work. And I've been playing basketball since I was 5 years old, so 42 years. I'm 47. I just turned 47 in July.
Man, you don't have to put yourself on blast like that.
Don't tell anybody that.
Look at you aged gracefully. You look a day over 37.
Thank you. But in my 30s, I said, I'm tired of jumping so much when I shoot because my knees are bad. Okay, what can I do to fix this? So now, I mean, at 17, 18, 19, 20, in my 20s, I shot from 35 feet and had bounce, and could jump out the gym. Of course, earlier injuries in my career, in my especially in high school, I had like 7 knee injuries on the same knee, on my left knee. So over time, it wears on your right knee as well because you're using that knee so much.
Yeah.
Right. So now, both my knees are in pain when I'm playing basketball, and I don't want to feel this way. So I changed the way I shoot. I don't have to jump as much. I can still shoot from 35 feet with no problem without jumping now. But I can do this without jumping now because I changed the mechanics in my shot, using more of my shoulder now because I'm not using my legs as much. But I knew why I needed to do that. I knew why I had to use my shoulders more than my legs so I can keep the same range but adjust the shot at the same time. A lot of coaches don't teach why you need to do this. Like, why do my hand need to be placed on the side of the ball? Like, why am I doing that? Why am I doing that?
Yeah, but I mean, to be fair, like, there's so much in basketball to cover, to think about, to know, right, as a coach, especially as a head coach, especially as a head coach of not an NBA team, right, any other team. It's like you have offense, you have defense, you have your press break, you got your sideline out of bounds, you got your culture, you got your habits. Like, do we want to shade over? Do we want to switch? Like, what do we, I mean, there's like 100 million things, right? What are our actions we getting out of? Like that sort of stuff. So it makes sense that coaches, like normal, regular, good coaches, can't teach shooting because they haven't studied it as deeply as they studied the game, right? I can't teach the game like that. I can't. Like, I don't want to be a head coach. That sounds terrifying. Like, I don't know I don't know how to make in-game adjustments. Like, I don't know how to substitute people. Like, I don't know how to do any of that. But you know what I can do? I can make sure your point guard isn't shooting 24% from the field. I can make sure that's not happening. Beyond that, I can't move the pieces because I haven't studied that. And so coaches overwhelmingly haven't studied this craft. They haven't put in their 10,000 hours on how to teach somebody how to shoot. And it doesn't mean they're a bad coach, but it does mean they're not a specialist. And that's what Mikal Bridges' shot says to me. And I hope I'm not just putting my foot in my mouth. Like, maybe he's working with really somebody and it's like way beyond my understanding. Like, I'm more than happy to like be corrected there if that's the case. But I have so much confidence in what I do now because I've seen it work over and over and over again. And I've questioned myself and I've had that imposter syndrome. And then, I mean, my girl, Emma Cannon, she was my first pro client who really believed in me. Not only did she triple her field goal percentage year over year after we started working together, triple. She's also right now in Poland. I mean, just killing the game.
Wow.
Her last 3 games, she's had 30, 28, and 26. And it's just like cooking people in EuroLeague, right? That's the top league in Europe. And this was a player that traditionally wasn't a scorer. Like, I mean, every once in a while, right, would have a good game. But now is cooking because now she's a threat to catch and shoot. We got a turnaround jumper, a turnaround fade into her bag. And she was already elite, bumping, banging in the paint, finishing, grabbing rebounds. Like, she's just overall a great player. But you add a shot to somebody's bag and you help them understand their shot, like, nothing's going to replace the reps, right? Like, you're still going to have to rep it out, but your reps are going to be 2, 3, 4 times as valuable because you understand your movement and why. Like, the reason you dig your balls of your feet in when you're running is because that allows you to get sharp impact onto the ground and therefore more force and therefore more speed. Like, you can explain that. Can you explain why you should load your wrist slightly in between the back of the ball and the side of the ball, and why your guide hand actually shouldn't be on the side of the ball, Jesse? It's actually most great shooters have it slightly on the top of the ball. So that they come up, because you imagine you can rip and go like this. I could show you still images of Steph, Duncan Robinson, Arike, Caitlin Clark. Every single one of them doesn't have their hand on the side. They have their hands slightly on the top of the ball when they come up. So their hands, if you move the ball, their hands would pretty much clap together.
And like so, Reggie Miller.
Not like Reggie Miller. Too far.
Not like Reggie Miller. That's too far. That's too much.
Too far. Too far. So there are no absolutes in shooting. Reggie Miller, Sean Marion are 2 great examples of no absolutes in shooting. If you get enough reps, you can shoot with whatever form you want. You can shoot from behind the back. Like, if you got enough reps at doing that.
Right.
But like across the board, the greatest shooters, even in the game right now and in the history of the game, don't have hand on the side. They have hand up here so they could actually control the ball on the lift on the way up. And that's probably how you shoot too. I bet if I saw a video of you shooting, that's what you would look like.
Right. I was about to say, I don't remember how I actually shoot now, but that was the way I was taught by my father when I was a kid. Put the hand on the side of the ball and you guide it this way. So I have to go back and actually look at my own videos to see.
I'd be willing to bet money that you don't have your hand on the side of the ball if you're a good shooter.
And I'm looking at Michael Jordan. When he first came into the league, his jump shot was awful. It looked awful to me. But later on in his career, especially when he came back from baseball, he shot a little different because he was bigger, first of all. So he had more strength in his shoulders. And he did more fade away. So he had to have a little more control of the ball, which is now his hand is on top of the. See now.
Yeah. And I think that's the blessing and the curse of athleticism, of like super bouncy players.
Yeah.
Like Russell Westbrook is a good example of that as well. Super bouncy players that weren't taught to shoot smoothly. Most of what they do is because they can create an advantage up in the air. they create that advantage, and then they just figure it out from there. They hold on to the ball because I'm gonna rise up above all of you, and I'm gonna create space in the air,
Right.
and then figure it out from there, which is great. Like I think all like jumpers, all super athletic bodies need that in their bag. Like need that type of jumper in their bag. Devin Booker is a great example of he has that shot in his bag, and he has his outside shot,
Yes.
which is a smoother like. There's no elevation before release. It's like elevation into release. And
All
so,
in one motion instead of you can see the actual motions of. I mean,
yeah,
and you can't say that by. I mean, I can. Maybe you can, but I can't say just because someone jumps and then does the effort, does that make their shot bad? But if it goes in, it goes in.
if it goes in, it goes in, but it does complicate the shot, right? Because if we're looking for simplicity, if you change the most undertaught skill in shooting a basketball is moving the ball at the same speed from start to finish. Like if you can move the ball at the same speed from start to finish as your starting point, right? And then you can manipulate it from there if you elevate, you use some, kind of double clutch jumpers, whatever. But like from the bottom up, if you're teaching somebody from the bottom up, the way you can teach them a simple shot is to tell them, can you move the ball at the same speed from start to finish? Start there.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can do that, you can figure out how to shape your shot in the way that your body needs. You can learn how to lift the ball instead of like pushing it out in front of your face, which is what most young people do because their chest is stronger than their shoulders. That's
Yep.
totally natural. So as they develop, we teach them to lift first, get their biceps raising first, and then their forearms extending after. Whereas most do it at the same time. They lift their forearm and or lift their bicep and extend their forearm at the same time. Can we get them to lift first and then extend forearm later? Which is what most great shooters do. And so, yeah, all of this bringing back to Mikal, and like I see that, and his whole game is based on his ability to catch and shoot from the baseline three.
Yeah,
And
that's his shot.
to see, and again, all of this is just speculation, and I could be putting my foot in my mouth right now, but to see somebody that looks like from an expert's opinion, that looks like somebody posed as an expert and said, I got you, I know what you're supposed to do, when really they didn't know it all. Because if our job is to help them shoot according to the laws of physics, Mikal holds the ball very far away from his body and then swings it out even further, and then like gives himself a little bit of a lever under it before he's then trying to create all of this energy forward again. Whereas what I would do is I would have him allow his arms to be comfortably by his side, and then just to move the ball in as straight of a line up as he could. You're naturally going to have an S curve, of course,
Right.
because of the way our bodies are shaped, but allowing his body to feel comfortable and going through that, and then working backwards from there. Okay, let's find a comfortable feeling, one that your body's going to like to repeat over and over and over again. And then if you're missing some shots there, cool. There's a way we can still mostly keep that feeling,
Right.
and then make some tune-ups in this, that, and the other, some attentional focus where, the ball will go in the hoop. You already know how to make shots. Like that's what I tell when I work with pros. I don't go in with pros saying, hey, here's what we need to change. Like I never would have changed Mikal's original shot. I might have some things up and said, hey, I'm not here to change your shot. I'm here to make it easier for you, which is how I present to really any athlete, but especially pros. And then when pros are hesitant to kind of move some stuff around, what I say to them is like, you've had this one shot for your entire life. You're not going to lose it if we play around with it a little bit. You still have taken 10,000 reps with this form. So you're not going to lose this form because we just see if something feels easier. But I promise you, when your body feels something easier, your body's going to like that. So it's not going to take you more than 2 weeks to adjust it. Really, like at the pro level, the amount of reps they get, like, are they going to have to work for diligently for 3, 6, 12 months to really lock that in? Sure. But your body is amazing at finding, like, the easiest way to complete a movement. It's just amazing at how our body, I mean, even like you're compensating on your right knee, right? Your body found a way to the easiest way for you to move, right? Which meant not putting too much on your left leg. And so how can I complement your body and what your body needs and also still make something feel easy for you? It's going to look different. We walk different, we talk different, we got different DNA, we move a little bit different. So what I'm saying is, Jesse, you can't shoot like me. Is what I'm saying.
Well, I know that. That might be up for debate. I don't know. Maybe I can't teach. I can't teach like you, but shooting is something that I absolutely love. I do it every
All
day.
right, all right. Well, I would agree with you, but then we'd both be wrong.
Exactly. No, but I appreciate that. I
Ah,
appreciate the humbling,
yeah.
how you humbled me
Nah,
in that
nah. I
moment.
got you. I got
um, so talking about changing shots, like Lonzo Ball is a great example of how his
you.
shot
Yeah.
looked terrible. And if he changes mechanics, it looks a lot better, and he's shooting a lot better. So this is something that he's done for 18, 19 years
I agree.
and was taught to change his shot. Now he's more successful at doing it. And so it can happen in the NBA, WNBA, high school,
Yes.
elementary. It can
Happens
happen.
all the time.
It happens all the
Yeah,
time.
it happens all the time. And what's great, Lonzo's just a great example because even though he did change his like position because he used to shoot from over here, kind of
Right.
like how Lamelo still shoots.
Yep.
Um, like he did adjust like his frame and how he frames his body when he goes up. But Lonzo's shot still looks like Lonzo's shot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like even
Mm-hmm.
though there was like a major adjustment to it, the quality of his shot still looks like the other quality,
Yep.
right? Just with this tangible difference.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Mikal's shot doesn't even look like his shot
No,
anymore,
at all. No.
and that's where the problem is. It's like somebody tried to change what your body already likes,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's why this we it's like a cookie cutter effect. Like we used to teach shooting in a really cookie cutter way, and because of that, it's caused more problems than it's caused like freedom of just like giving athletes freedom of movement in their body within reason, right?
Right.
So the
Mm-hmm.
every best shooter still has a follow through locked in right at their target. They still lift the ball up early and are able to release later. They still have great balance in their feet. They still and so when I say like everybody shoots a little different, like that's with a grain of salt. Like all players have these really foundational things in
Mm-hmm.
common about their shot. But being willing and able to help them move that around so that there are slight differences and giving them the freedom to say, like, bro, your shot's not going to look like my shot, and that's fine. You were
Right.
still going to figure out how to make it work in your own body, just like your walk doesn't look like my walk. But it all looks generally the same. We're still going
Mm-hmm.
heel toe, 1 foot in front of the other.
Right. So we got about 5 to 10 minutes left, and I asked this question to everybody who I have on the show. But I'll ask you two questions that are, and it's going to be a little different from what I normally do. So
Okay.
the first question is, who are your top five greatest players? Your favorites, not the greatest, not who not who everybody thinks is the list of the greatest players of all time.
Okay. Okay.
Who are your top five favorite players?
Favorite players. Um, that's a good question. So let me go top five favorite shooters.
You know, that was my next
Um, uh,
question. That was my next question. So let's do that then.
oh,
Let's
it's
do
top five favorite shooters.
yeah.
Okay, so let me do shooters first. I'm gonna list these five because I like how different every single one of their shots are, and they were
Mm-hmm.
still able to be the greatest shooter
Okay.
one of the greatest shooters of all time. Um, so first, I would say Dirk. Dirk had such a unique shot
Yeah.
and a unique shooting coach. Like if you look at film of Dirk shooting coach training him, that guy was bananas, and it's awesome. Like he was super unconventional, and he actually taught Dirk to shoot without spin, to have no spin on the
Oh wow.
basketball. So if you go back and watch like Dirk shoot, he still has backspin, but it's like incredibly slow. Like I can't
Mm.
even do it when I try to do it. So Dirk as a shooter, I really like. On the flip side, there's a shooter. Actually, he might be back in the G League. But he played for Orlando for a little while before he had this really unfortunate, terrible accident injury in his like one of his first games on it with his ankle or his foot. But his name is Devin Kennedy.
Okay.
Devin Kennedy has the purest jumper I've
Wow.
ever seen. Devin Kennedy, he was G League MVP 1 year, if not last year, then the year before. I think he's playing in Greece right now. But I've never seen somebody shot and been like, that's it. Before Devin Kennedy, he's actually married to Katie Lou Samuelson now. They've got
Oh,
a
okay.
baby. Yeah. So Devin Kennedy is a shooter. Obviously Steph, right?
Mm-hmm.
Steph has the simplest physics of all time. This is the
Yep.
reason why he's the best shooter of all time. He has found simplicity as something that is completely his and completely repeatable. There's a shooter right now that was playing for New York for a while named Marine Johannes. Marine Johannes, or it might be Johannes, I don't know. She's French. Her jumper is butter, and she plays with a bunch of swag on top of that. So she'll
Mm.
hit threes, like sidestep threes off 1 foot, and they'll let her take that shot in the WNBA because
Wow.
she's just that like smooth with it. And then who else? I would say Allie Quigley. Coming out of, she didn't play this year, which is a travesty, but she was last year and really all of her years in the WNBA, I believe, to be the best WNBA shooter, or one of the best WNBA shooters of all time.
Okay.
And nobody knows her name. Allie Quigley, her energy transfer was absurd. Like as soon as she caught the ball, she was suddenly didn't have the ball anymore, and
Mm.
was incredibly accurate no matter where she was shooting from. And it was just like simplest shot.
Who
I
did
mean,
she play
Kayla
for last year?
McBride, huh?
Who did she play for?
She didn't last year because she's married to Courtney Vandersloot, and they were both playing for Chicago. And
Oh,
then New
okay.
York took just Vandersloot and not Quigg, so Quigg was like, "Well, I'm not doing this anymore," which is just like a shame because she was really the best shooter in the WNBA. And then just a couple of honorable mentions: Kayla McBride, love her shot, super simple, like she shoots with a ton of confidence. Christy Tolliver, like all time great shooter. I mean, I could go on. I've studied so many shooters; it's insane. But those would be my top five with a couple honorable mentions there.
Okay. And so you don't want to do top five players because
I mean, I could, but I study shooters,
yeah.
and so I feel like those are going to be better answers.
Okay.
Like I like
I
I
like
like I
those
like
answers
fun
anyway,
players.
and I
Yeah,
like how you can explain those answers better than other people can explain why LeBron is not in their top five. So,
yeah, for sure.
like I said all the time, I appreciate what you do. I appreciate the person that you are, the teacher that you are, the shooter that you are. Like I said when I met you before, I've learned a lot from you just from watching your
Mm,
videos. So, and I'm sure millions of other people feel the same way. I say millions because I know
crazy,
it's going to grow and grow the more you do this.
man.
Thank you for taking the time out and doing this podcast with me again. We'll have to do another one sometime next year before the event, hopefully. Uh, but I appreciate you for what you do.
All right, I appreciate you, Jess. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Okay, bye.
Bye bye.
That's okay. Hey.